When I returned to the clubroom, I stumbled upon Asahina standing inside in her bra and panties. Asahina, with the maid costume in her hands, stood with her eyes wide open, looking at me, frozen to the spot with my hand on the doorknob. She slowly opened her mouth, preparing to scream. "I'm sorry." Before she had the chance to yell, I pulled out the foot that was in the room and shut the door quickly. Thanks to that, I was able to avoid her screaming. I really ought to knock first. No, wait. She ought to lock the door if she wanted to change. Just as I was wondering whether to store that image of her smooth, half-naked body into my long-term memory banks, a soft knock came from the other side of the door.
You can enter now.
Sorry about that.
It doesn't matter.
I looked at Asahina's lowered head as she opened the door and apologized. She blushed and said,
Sorry, I always show my embarrassing side.
I don't really mind at all, actually. She's really quite an obedient girl, wearing her maid costume as Haruhi told her to. She's just too cute. I was afraid if I continued to stare at Asahina like that, the image I had just received would begin to tilt towards the dirty side. Mustering all the reason I had to resist those frustrating desires, I swiftly sat down at the commander's seat and turned on the computer. Noticing someone watching me, I lifted my head. I found Nagato Yuki actually looking at me for a change. She pushed her glasses up slightly, then returned to her book. She moves just like a human. I opened the web browser and went to the club homepage. I tried to find something to edit out of the ever-static page, but I didn't know where to start. I used to think editing web pages was a waste of time, and I would close the window and sigh. Yet here I was, bored as hell. I've gotten tired of Othello. I needed something to kill time. As I muttered under my breath with my arms crossed, someone suddenly placed a cup of warm tea in front of me. I glanced upwards and found Asahina in her maid costume smiling while standing with a tray in her hands. She's exactly like a real maid. Thanks. I had already been treated to a cup of hot coffee by Koizumi, but I still gladly accepted the cup of tea. Asahina then placed another cup by Nagato's side. She then sat beside her and silently sipped her own cup of tea. In the end, Haruhi never came to the clubroom that day. Why didn't you come yesterday? Didn't you want to hold a debriefing? As usual, I turned and spoke to Haruhi behind me before the homeroom session. Lying flat on the desk with her chin on the surface, Haruhi glared at me.
You're annoying. I already had the debriefing on my own yesterday.
I knew right away that Haruhi must have retraced the places she went last Saturday after school.
I was afraid I might have missed something, so I thought it's safer to go through the places again.
What are you, a detective?
It's hot as hell. When is the school gonna switch uniforms? I want to wear short sleeves.
They don't change seasons until June, and there's only 1 week left until the end of May. Suzumiya, I might have said this before, but I think you should stop looking for those mysterious events and try to live a normal high school life. I was expecting her to raise her head and scowl at me, yet Haruhi's head remained stuck to the desk. It seems she's really exhausted.
A normal high school life? What kind of life is that?
She doesn't really sound interested at all. Something like finding a decent boyfriend. You might even stumble upon an alien while you're dating. That'll be 2 birds with 1 stone. That's not too bad, right? I started thinking about Asahina's conversation with me that day while making such a suggestion. Besides, there are plenty of guys lining up for you. All you need to do is hold back that eccentric behavior of yours and you'll have a boyfriend in no time.
It doesn't matter if I have a boyfriend or not. All this so-called love is just a temporary confusion of the mind, a mental illness.
She was lying on the desk and looking out the window.
Actually, I do tend to think about this stuff from time to time. I'm an energetic girl after all, plus my body has its needs. I'm not dumb enough to take on this troublesome stuff just because some sort of moment of confusion. And if I'm too busy dating, what happens to the SOS Brigade? I just founded it!
Technically, it hasn't been founded yet. Then why not create a club that involves some sort of entertainment? That would attract more members for sure.
No.
Instantly rejected.
I founded the SOS Brigade because all the other normal clubs were too boring. And I recruited a cute girl like Asahina and a mysterious transfer student as well. Why hasn't anything happened yet? It's about time something strange happened.
This is the first time I've seen Haruhi this depressed, but she's cute like that too. For a cute girl like her, she's pretty enough even when she's not smiling. It's such a pity the more I think about it. Haruhi spent the rest of the day sleeping soundly. What's amazing is, the teacher never noticed. No, this has to be a coincidence. Yet, from this moment, strange things were quietly beginning. Since it wasn't a big deal at the beginning, no one else had noticed yet, but I had been thinking about it all day ever since homeroom session. While I was speaking to Haruhi, my mind was dwelling on something else. It all began with a note that was left in my shoe locker this morning. The note said, after school when everyone has left, come to classroom 1-5. It was obviously a girl's handwriting. What is this all about? An emergency conference was held in my mind between my differing opinions. The first one said, this has happened before, but the handwriting was different from the one on the bookmark. Nagato, who claims to be a living humanoid interface for the aliens, has handwriting so beautiful it's as though it were printed. Yet this note gives the impression of a high school girl's handwriting. Besides, Nagato wouldn't be so direct as to stick a note in my shoe locker. The second said, could it be Asahina? No, if it's Asahina, she wouldn't just randomly tear a piece of paper and scribble a note on it, and she would put a time to meet. That's right, she would have placed her well-written letter into an envelope. Moreover, it was strange that the location was my classroom. It can't be Haruhi, said the third opinion. That's even more impossible. If it were her, she would have just dragged me to the staircase and told me right away if she wanted me to know something. Based on the same reasoning, I eliminated Koizumi from the equation as well. Finally, a fourth opinion said, could it be a love letter from some stranger? Let's not worry ourselves on whether this is a love letter or not. The thing is, I'm being called out by someone, and it doesn't even have to be a girl. Don't fall for it. It's most likely a prank by Taniguchi and Kunikita. Yes, that's the most plausible explanation. It's possible that idiot Taniguchi would play such senseless pranks, but he would have written more. I walked aimlessly around the school while thinking about all this. After class, Haruhi said she was sick and went home early. This is a great chance. I decided to go to the club room first. I'd go crazy if I went too early to the classroom to wait for some unknown stranger. Plus, if all of a sudden Taniguchi suddenly came in and said, yo, you still waiting? I can't believe you'd fall for such a small note. How innocent you are. I'd be mightily pissed. Kill some time first. Go and have a peek in the classroom, and then go in after making sure no one is around. Yes, this is the perfect strategy. I arrived at the clubroom entrance on my own. This time, I remembered to knock.
Please come in.
Once I confirmed it was Asahina's voice, I opened the door. No matter how many times I look at it, Asahina just looks so adorable in her maid costume.
It took you a while to arrive. Where's Suzumiya-san?
Looks like she's brewing tea again. She went home. She seems really tired. If you want to exact revenge, now's your chance. Right now she looks really weak.
I'm not going to do any such thing.
We sat face to face and drank our tea in the room with Nagato reading. We seemed to have reverted back to the same aimless association as before. Koizumi still hasn't arrived?
Koizumi-kun came earlier. He said he's got part-time work today, so he went off first.
What kind of part-time work? But as things stand, I can confidently cross out Koizumi and Haruhi from my suspect list on who wrote the note. Since we didn't have anything to do, I played some Othello with Asahina and chatted with her. After winning 3 games, we stopped playing and went to surf the internet to read the news. And at this moment, Nagato closed her book. Recently, we've taken this action of hers as a sign that it's time to call it a day for club activities, even though we don't know what club activities there are, and we all began to pack up and leave.
I need to change. You go on first.
Hearing Asahina say that, I rushed out of the club room. The clock pointed to 5:30. There shouldn't be anyone left in the classroom at this hour, right? Even if it were a prank by Taniguchi, he would have gone home after getting bored from waiting so long. Despite that, I still ran up 2 flights of stairs to the top floor just to make sure. I stopped for a breath in the silent corridor. Since the classroom windows are all stained, there's no way I'd be able to see what's going on inside. Just that the sunset has colored the room orange-red. I casually opened the door to Class 5 and stuck my head inside. I wasn't at all surprised that someone was waiting inside the classroom, but I was shocked when I found out who it was. Standing in front of the blackboard was a person who I would not have thought of at all.
You're late.
Asakura Ryoko smiled. She flicked her silky long hair and started walking down the aisle. Her smooth thighs under her folded skirt and her white indoor shoes were really distracting. She stopped in the center of the room and waved towards me with a smile.
Come in.
As if I were being sucked in, her action caused me to let go of the door handle and walk towards her. So it was you.
Yes. Surprised?
Asakura smiled happily. The right side of her face is red from the sunset shining in. You were looking for me? I intentionally asked in a rough tone. Asakura giggled and replied,
Indeed, I was looking for you. I have something to ask you.
Asakura's white face turned towards me.
Have you heard of the saying, it is better to do it and regret than to not do it at all? You think that makes sense?
I'm not really sure who said that, but I guess the meaning makes sense.
If there exists a situation where staying in the status quo would make things worse and you have no idea how to improve it, what would you do?
Improve on what? The economy? Ignoring my question, Asakura smiled and continued.
Wouldn't you have said that you should do it first and face the consequences later? Since nothing is going to change if things continue like this.
I guess so. Asakura, who had her hands behind her back, leaned slightly forward.
However, since those above are incapable of thinking laterally, they are out of touch with the rapid changes in this reality. I'm compelled to do something in order to make things run smoothly. That's why, being in this reality, I have decided to act on my own and forcefully make some changes.
What on earth are you trying to say? Is this some sort of prank? I looked around the room, wondering whether Taniguchi was hiding inside the cleaning supply cabinet, or whether he was sitting under the teacher's desk.
I've grown tired of having to observe a changeless environment. That's why
I was so busy looking around that I didn't really hear what Asakura was saying.
I have to kill you and see what sort of reaction Suzumiya Haruhi would have.